So, good evening. Tonight we have a fairly short video, I think, and this is the inaccuracies in documents relating to history in general, but here specifically to the Nazi time and the membership database who was a member of the Nazi Party itself, the NSDAP. Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, NSDAP. And in my research here to the Prince Albrecht Palais, I wanted to look at each individual in my family on my father's side, and of course to find out whether or not they were actually member and who was a member of the Nazi Party. Just to get a general idea. And here the problem is that the American records, I believe they came from Munich, from the Brown House in 1945. They wound up here in the United States. And they were cataloged to a certain extent, contains a lot of errors, and it is incomplete. And I wanted to give you an example on this because I also looked for the first time about the history of my grandfather on my mother's side. That is my mother's father. His name was Carl Niebel. And so when we do a search here, which is rather complicated, if it lets me search, it depends on if Microsoft wants us to do something or not. Well, I guess no, it worked earlier. Let me see if I can go back here. This was the first search I did here earlier under my grandfather's name on my mother's side. So we see we're going to come back with 50 results. There is a fellow, I'm not quite sure where he is. He created a website which is called brownarchive.org. Search, and he wants you to send him some money to buy me a coffee. And if I put my grandfather's name in here, Niebel, Carl, and we do a search on it, it comes back right away. And we see it correct. Date of birth, wrong. The occupation is wrong. The birthplace in Geldern near the Dutch border is correct. He was living in Berlin and his member number was 4,826,143. So when we open the image, I have downloaded that already. That is this here. And when we actually read this, what it says, Beruf, you can see this how screwed up this whole thing actually is, the way it was scanned. It says Vertreter, Handelsvertreter. And that translates into English as a sales representative. And we can see here that he lived or worked at Steinmetzstraße number 5, first floor in Hermsdorf, Berlin. And the city of Berlin, of course, had an address book. And when we look him up under, let me just see, this one here. This is his actual entry under the name Niebel Karl, Lederkommiss, Hermsdorf, Steinmetzstraße 5, and he had a telephone. Lederkommiss is like a leather wholesaler. You're in the wholesale business of leather hinds, basically. And when we look up the actual street, die Steinmetzstraße 5, we can see Maron, SI is the Eigentümer, that is the owner of the property. This is my great-grandmother. She was a widow at that point already. And it says Eigentümer, and she's the owner. And then they put in the parentheses here, Freiherr von Steinstraße 10. Now you can see this, there's going to be another arrow in there. And the Freiherr von Steinstraße 10 is actually Freiherr von Steinstraße 6. This is now the street listing by house number. Maron. So she owned Freiherr von Steinstraße 6 as well, Maron. I forgot what her first name was. She widowed, telephone. And then here, Maron Gymnastische Schule. So she did gymnastics as well. That she had a school in there where they had the basically the business headquarters was at home. And then she had a tenant in that building here. Stäblein was a doctor engineer and a professor for engineering. And this is the house my mother was actually born into the year later. This is from 1937. And then we have one more listing, and this is under leather in the address book from 1937. And if you're old enough, you probably remember the yellow pages. And the yellow pages basically were incorporated back then in the address book. And today we got Google and Bing business listings. So we don't really have yellow pages anymore, but this is what that looked. In Berlin, this is now for the greater Berlin, Kommissionsgeschäfte. That means businesses on commissions. It's basically wholesaling the stuff in a certain extent. He is listed Niebel, Carl, Hermsdorf, Steinmetzstraße 5, and his telephone number was 470323 in 1937 for his business. And again, the index card, which this person here who runs this website, Brown Archive, had taken over from the National Archives, who had established this database when they scanned this, put in Landarbeiter, which is a farm worker, like a day laborer for a farm. And of course, this doesn't match. So if you're researching relatives and you don't know them very well, then you may need to double check the findings you have in the material in the first place. Now, the interesting part is this. I found from my father's side, the people I was looking for, except for Prince Wilhelm von Hessen, who had member number 1.2 million. So he came in like in 1932, and there is no record of him in here or of his cousins. So it looks like that the records under 2 million, member number, say like 1.9 million, and below are missing in this entire database here, because they said like they have 5,433 files or something like this, which accumulates to like 5.6 million records, or basically members. The total member count was over 8 million. So there is at least almost 2 million members missing. And the other one I couldn't find was Kaiser Wilhelm's son, Auwi, who had become a member of the Nazi Party in 1928 or 1929. And he had a number under 1 million, I believe. And Auwi is not listed in here at all. And the relative I was looking for was listed in here in this database under her husband's name. So this is how tricky this gets. So these records are very questionable. These entries you see here can have misleading information. When you look at this here, like that is basically the index card for the index card, which was apparently written in German, contains correct information, contains wrong information. Many times when the people scanned these documents like this here, they couldn't read the handwriting. Niebel Karl, this is H. Vertreter. The misspelled Vertreter is usually starts with a V like Victor, not with an F like Frank in German. Even at that time in 1937, they had spelled that with a V like Victor. And you can see there's another oddity in there, is the application to become a member in the party. My grandfather applied on September the 2nd, 1937. But according to this here, he was already admitted on May 1st, 1937. So all of these cards they had, they were predated in that year to a particular date, and it was apparently always May 1st, 1937, the May date. So this is something you have to look through it. On most of these things, you probably will find correct information. A lot of times things are misspelled, so you have to be careful there too. Or the people couldn't read it, and that makes it really adventurous. And this is why the video for the Prince Albrecht Palais have been taking so long, because I have to hand search this for each person to find out exactly of what and what not was their status or what was their involvement in it. And with that, you have a great evening.